What's going on, everybody? This is Sai from Forge Physio. Today we're going over the Hex Bar Deadlift. So I have a rather large style bar here, and I'm about 5'10". So technically this handle height, for my own preferences and how I tend to coach my clientele, would be a little bit high. If I was going for more of like a half squat variation, this would be okay. But if I wanted a traditional Hex Bar height, I'm typically going to go with one of the smaller silver style bars. And I believe this bar is designed for someone that's like 6'1", 6'2", and taller. But setup position in terms of our foot pressure, our hip position, and our bracing is going to be the same no matter how tall you are and no matter what bar you're using, so this will work just fine. I tend to cue a little bit more of an athletic stance. It's just all going to come down to preference. So my feet are about hip width apart. It feels most comfortable for me to turn my feet out maybe 15 degrees or so, so a slight toe out. And then when I go to that bottom position, I want to think that I'm pushing my feet through the floor as I'm standing up. A really common compensation that we see people go deadlift is they don't know how to create tension in the bottom half, and they're just essentially pulling with their back while performing the deadlift. So when I go down to that bottom position, I like to be able to fill my midsection full of air. So most people, when they brace, they're going to kind of bear down and round over to where they're flexing the ab muscles in the front half of their body, and they don't get a lot of tension through their oblique area. So we want to think that if I put a belt around my midsection and it's a tiny bit too loose, I want to fill that belt up as much as possible before I grab the bar and come to that top position. So how I like to coach it is that I'm taking a big deep breath. I'm building that pressure through my midsection. I can still hold a conversation with you and I have all this tension, and then I'm reaching toward the ground. When I reach toward the ground, that gets me to actually create a little bit of rounding in my back, which is opposite of what most people were told when they deadlift. A lot of people will squeeze their back together when they deadlift, and that, in my opinion, it ends up putting you into extension. And then if you do lose positioning, you move through a much bigger range of motion, and we're trying to avoid that essentially. So I like to cue kind of reaching toward the ground, and if you just stand and reach as hard as you can, you'll feel your pecs fire, and then you will feel your lats fire as well. And we want to be able to hold from that position, drive our feet through the floor, and then drive our shoulders toward the ceiling, so we're kind of pushing in opposite directions as you go to stand up. So again, my heels are about hip width apart, my feet are slightly turned out. I like to think about getting heavy into my feet, like I'm trying to push my heel and then under my big toe and pinky toe through the floor. Big deep breath. I come down to the bar. So you notice I did that little reach to get my lats and my pec. And then when I come to the bar, I want to be able to take the slack out of the bar before I stand up. So you're going to hear a click. That first click is me taking the slack out of the bar. My neck's in a neutral position, and then I'm driving through my feet and bringing my hips through at the very end and not arching my back. So I'm going to turn from this, so you can see from the side here, that when I stand up, so again, same setup, driving my feet through the floor, big deep breath, create tension, arms reach, come down to that hinge position, looking kind of forward with my neck, take the slack out of the bar, drive through my feet, and then when I stand up, I'm squeezing my hips, and I'm not overarching my back, which is what a lot of people will do. So you want to be able to finish in that top position without overarching the back. And then a cue that I've heard that I like is you're trying to keep your knees somewhat forward and bring your hips toward your knees, which is allowing you to finish with your glutes and your quads instead of just hyperextending the knee and then using your low back to stand up. So relatively technical movement. If we try to overcoach it, spend a couple minutes with a lighter load and try to feel those positions of the foot pressure, getting your back in the right position, bracing through your midsection, and making sure that you're not overextending your low back when you go to stand up at the top.